Reborn in 1979. Facing the past. Jiang Chuyang decided to start with farming. P.S. Warm rebirth of farming culture, focusing on daily life. Keywords of the novel. Rebirth 1979 to farm no pop-ups, Rebirth 1979 to farm TXT complete collection download, Rebirth 1979 to farm latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Winter in 1979, it was a bit cold. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Winter in 1979, it was a bit cold. In the winter of 1979. After heavy snow, Jiangmu Township is covered in silver. Jiangju Village, at the foot of Xinyu Mountain. On the top of a brick house in the southeast. Suddenly, there was a loud avalanche sound. The sound of the large snowfall falling on the ground was not loud, but it woke up the sleeping boy Jiang Chuyang inside the room. He looked around in confusion, feeling a bit lost for a moment. If I remember correctly, before waking up, I seemed to be drinking and eating with major clients in a hotel. But how could this suddenly appear inside this adobe house? Look at the simple and familiar environment around here, as well as the yellowed calendar on the wall. This seems to be my childhood hometown, but with the changes of the times, it has long been demolished and can only be seen in my dreams. Am I dreaming? Jiang Chuyang murmured to himself, and to verify, he reached out and pinched his arm hard. It wasn't until tears of pain came out that he realized he wasn't dreaming, as if he had really returned to his childhood hometown. This made Jiang Chuyang extremely scared and quickly got up to search for his phone, as well as his car keys and wallet. When I see that the bed I'm sleeping on is paved with straw, even the material inside the blanket is straw. The whole person was stunned, and a long-forgotten memory surged up in their hearts like a tide. After a while, he finally regained his senses and had to accept a fact. It seems that I have been reborn, from 2022 to 1979, as can be seen from the calendar on the walls of the adobe house. Otherwise, my arms wouldn't have become so small, and that big belly wouldn't have disappeared either. That is to say, I have become healthier and more youthful and handsome. But my billions of dollars are gone, and that charming wife who is only over 30 is probably someone else's. But it's not important, what's important is that being reborn means everything can be restarted. Thinking of this, Jiang Chuyang chuckled self-deprecatingly and walked down from the wooden bed. At the moment when his foot touched the ground, he instinctively jumped onto the bed again. It turns out that the ground is icy and piercing, and it's impossible to go barefoot. Where are my shoes? Jiang Chuyang looked at the uneven muddy ground. I saw only 2 pairs of grass shoes, big and small, under the bed. That's holding my head for a while without knowing what to say. He really couldn't accept the start of being reborn. But in the end, he compromised and sat at the bedside wearing grass shoes. After all, no matter what, the memories and life experiences brought by his rebirth are enough for him to change everything around him in a short period of time. If you can't even adapt to wearing grass shoes, you may not even have the courage to survive in the agricultural era of 1979. If I remember correctly, the reform and opening up happened in 1979. And in Jiangmu Township, the land was already divided into households in the 7th or 8th year. In this situation, as long as you are willing to work to get rid of the current predicament in the next 3 to 5 months, that should be no problem. Thinking of this, Jiang Chuyang walked towards the gate. Approaching, when I opened the door, I saw a white expanse at the entrance. There are no towering buildings, let alone the prosperous era decades later. It's the kind of intoxicating tranquility, with silent and beautiful snow scenery. Whoosh, the cold wind blew, instantly awakening Jiang Chuyang, who was immersed in the snowy scenery. With a hint of timidity and hope, Jiang Chuyang shouted at the top of his throat, "Little sweet potato, where have you been?" The reason for such behavior is that it has been more than 10 years since I was reborn, and I have not seen my distant sister, Little Sweet Potato. I can see it as soon as I'm reborn. To be honest, it's really a bit uneasy. According to the timeline, the age of Little Sweet Potato is estimated to be less than 5 years old in 1979, which is as much as 10 years younger than Jiang Chuyang. The big name of Sweet Potato is Jiang Xiaohong because she loves to eat raw sweet potatoes the most. So my family gave me a nickname for a small sweet potato that is easy to feed. However, at home, Jiang Chuyang is not the eldest, but the fourth. There are 2 older sisters and 1 older brother on top. If I remember correctly. Because my family is poor. Only the second sister, Jiang Dongju, got married after 7 or 9 years. And the third sister, Jiang Xiulan, is currently working part-time at the Chaoyang spinning factory to save dowry. Basically, I can only go home once a month, and it's the kind of person who goes back and leaves on the same day. As for his elder brother, Jiang Guoqing, he has gone to the military and has not yet started a family or started a career. Except for a few home letters within a year, there is no connection. At the thought of this, Jiang Chuyang couldn't help but sigh. After all, it has caused such a situation. Besides being too poor at home. More often than not, it's because there is a black sheep father in the family. My mother, Li Hongyu, cried countless times. However, even so, the father still had no intention of repentance. He was also encouraged by a group of fox friends to go south and make a lot of money. So far, there has been no news for over a year. And according to the memory of Rebirth, Father Jiang Yongkang should have been caught buying and selling small commodities in the coastal area. It wasn't until 1985 that he was released. Although my father changed a lot after returning. Also took the initiative to take responsibility for the entire family. But at that time, everyone else was already in their 50s. In the process of changing, what can be done can only end in frustration. The reason for using the word ending in depression. That's because before his rebirth, Jiang Chuyang was born after his father's death. I accidentally flipped through the diary left by my father. Only then did I realize that my father was a person with great aspirations. Helplessly, in times of adversity, every time I showcase my skills. They were all limited by the times, and also suffered greatly from the pitfalls of their era. Otherwise, I would never have been idle for a lifetime. This thought fell, and a crisp and sweet voice rang in Jiang Chuyang's ear. Fourth brother, why are you shouting, wah, dot? The speaker was a sweet potato, thin and weak like a dry stick. However, big eyes are very agile, and when paired with curved eyebrows, it feels like they can speak. She wore a pair of ponytails, a patched gray cotton jacket, and her little hands were as cold as carrots. At this moment, carrying pots of rice bran, he walked over crunching under the snow. Rice bran refers to rice husks. In rural areas, it is generally used to feed pigs. Jiang Chuyang is naturally clear about this. He saw the little sweet potato walking with great difficulty wearing his mother's rain shoes. That was when she approached with a heart-wrenching expression and took the basin, then picked her up with one hand and said, "Where's Mom? Don't tell me you're still earning a job on a snowy day." Moma is a dialect, which means mother, in Zhangmu Township, while earning wages was the only way to earn money in rural areas in the 1960s and 1970s. The necessary fuel tickets, cloth tickets, match tickets, and other certificates must also be obtained by earning work points. Otherwise, the whole family would probably starve to death. Although it is the end of 1979 and the reform and opening up have already been carried out, the land has also been allocated to households. But the model of earning wages is still not abandoned in rural areas. So Jiang Chuyang asked Little Sweet Potato like this. Well, Mom went to earn some work early in the morning, saying that the captain needed someone to dig deep channels and even manage the lunch at noon. Upon hearing this, Little Sweet Potato nodded her head and then said everything she knew. So what do we have for breakfast? Jiang Chuyang saw the cold wind outside and walked into the adobe house holding the sweet potato. I don't know, the rice jar at home is already full of rice, and the sweet potatoes are just as bright. The little sweet potato timidly bit his index finger and said, "Fourth brother, I really stole this time. I really can. Cha, it means to eat." Jiang Chuyang smiled bitterly at the words and said, "Silly sister, I didn't mean to blame you." He only then realized that his home was now deserted, with no food left to fill his stomach. New book set sale, seeking collection recommendation tickets. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Brother takes you to eat meat. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Brother takes you to eat meat. If I hadn't guessed correctly, I'm afraid my mother would have known about this situation long ago, so she specifically told little sweet potato to dig a canal and manage lunch. But in fact, it is unknown whether this is the case. It is highly likely that the mother will be hungry for a day. Then bring back the grain earned from earning wages. Give him some sweet potatoes to satisfy his hunger. This situation. It's everywhere in Jiangju village. The reason for this is not that the villagers are lazy. But in the first half of the year, there was a severe drought, which resulted in many of the farmland contracted by everyone having no harvest. In such a situation, being able to survive until now without starving to death is actually a miracle. But, fourth brother's nest is hungry. Little sweet potato touched her belly and looked at the rice bran in the basin, swallowing saliva. Rice bran is just right, Jiang Chuyang quickly reminded. What did you say exactly? Little sweet potato looked at Jiang Chuyang eagerly. Jiang Chuyang hesitated for a moment. Didn't Mom leave anything to eat before she left? Even if it's leftover food or wild vegetable bark. For him, it's all possible. As long as he is full, he believes that giving him a day's time should not be a problem in obtaining winter food. Dare it. Little sweet potato shook her head and said, "Leave everything behind. If you don't believe me, you can go to the kitchen and take a look." Okay. Jiang Chuyang put down the small sweet potato he was holding in his hand and walked towards the kitchen. Due to heavy snowfall, the low-lying floor of the kitchen is now filled with accumulated water after melting snow. Around the eaves, a small amount of water stains flowed down the walls. Entering the kitchen, Jiang Chuyang couldn't help but frown upon seeing this scene. This kind of kitchen is already a dangerous house for him. If we continue to cook and stir-fry here, I'm afraid it might collapse and crush me inside, but I don't even know. But thinking so, Jiang Chuyang still walked in without hesitation. Because according to the memory of Rebirth, this kitchen should not collapse in the next 3 to 5 years. The rice jar is located near the window and stove, which is the only place without accumulated water. Jiang Chuyang opened the lid and saw that it was empty inside. There was really not even a grain of rice left. That is to say, even cooking porridge is now a luxury. But Jiang Chuyang still didn't give up and rummaged through the phosphate fertilizer bag in the corner. Hard work pays off for those who are willing, and finally found a sweet potato the size of an egg. But there is only one, there is no more. Little sweet potato's eyes lit up as he looked at her. But she felt embarrassed to ask Jiang Chuyang for it. I can only stand on the side, biting my index finger and watching. This made Jiang Chuyang feel extremely distressed, so he handed the sweet potato to little sweet potato and said, "Take it and eat. But remember to wash it clean." "What are you, fourth brother?" Little sweet potato asked with concern instead of taking the only sweet potato. At home, Jiang Chuyang is the one who takes care of her the most. Second sister and third sister don't even care about her life or death, nor do they have time to take care of her. In such a situation, with food to eat, she naturally wouldn't eat alone. "Brother, go outside to find something to eat, maybe there will be meat to eat," Jiang Chuyang said, regardless of whether little sweet potato agreed or not. After stuffing the sweet potato into the small hand of the little sweet potato, he picked up the hoe in the corner and went out. Fourth brother, wait for me, I also want to have some meat. Little sweet potato was taken aback and chased after him with short legs. For her, whether Jiang Chuyang is lying to her or telling the truth, she doesn't want to stay at home alone. You slow down, be careful of slipping and falling. Jiang Chuyang turned back to look at the weak little sweet potato and shook his head. Hee hee. Something's wrong, little sweet potato replied with a smile. But the next second, the sole of the foot slipped on the snow, and the whole person fell backwards. If it weren't for Jiang Chuyang's eye disease, he might have hit the back of his head. Are you saying it's okay like this? Jiang Chuyang had no choice but to lead the sweet potato towards the southern bamboo forest at the foot of the mountain south of Xinyu Mountain. Because the mountain road was covered with a thick layer of snow, the two siblings had a difficult time walking. But even so, they did not give up. As one big and one small footprint extends on the road. The southern bamboo forest at the foot of Xinyu Mountain will soon arrive. However, most of the southern bamboo trees have lost their usual tall and straight figures. They were all hunchbacked due to the heavy snow. Looking at it in a disorganized manner. There are several dilapidated and collapsed adobe houses on the side. That used to be where Jiang Chuyang's third and fourth grandfathers lived. But later on, they all moved out and went to live in a big city. And this place is quite remote. So it gradually became abandoned. Fourth brother, what are you bringing me here for? Where is there meat here? Little sweet potato looked around curiously, with disappointment in her big eyes. What I said before was maybe, but it's not certain, Jiang Chuyang replied with a smile and walked towards the edge of the southern bamboo forest, carrying a hoe. As he approached, he swung his hoe and cleared the snow from the ground. When I saw a piece of bluestone, there was a soil bulge. That was when I raised my hoe and started digging. Sweet potato stretched its neck and watched from the side. When I saw the pointed head of the bamboo shoot, the whole person laughed. It's obvious that she knows bamboo shoots can be eaten, right? Winter bamboo shoots can be eaten. If this can be dug out, then you really don't have to go hungry in the morning. But when I think of the bitter taste of bamboo shoots. Little sweet potato frowned slightly. Originally, when there was no food in Jiangxia village in previous years. Some villagers also come to the foot of Xinyu Mountain to dig winter bamboo shoots and eat them raw to satisfy their hunger. But there are very few people who can ultimately eat it. As for the reason, I definitely don't know how to cook winter bamboo shoots into delicious food. I don't know how to get rid of the bitter taste. But Jiang Chuyang, who was reborn, knew it. I know better that this winter bamboo shoot is a good thing, rich in nutrients. In the 1970s, villagers in Jiangxia village did not eat winter bamboo shoots because they had never eaten the dish of stir-fried meat with winter bamboo shoots. Not right. It should be said that farmers in the 1970s were reluctant to add oil to any dish they cooked. Even boil in water without adding oil, in such a situation. It's strange that winter bamboo shoots can be made delicious. But Jiang Chuyang, the reborn one, is different. He is a chef who has been working for almost 20 years. By utilizing his superb culinary skills, he managed over a dozen restaurants and even made a fortune, becoming a billionaire. If you want to cook the small winter bamboo shoots well, it's not a problem. As time passed, a fist-sized winter bamboo shoot was quickly dug out. Judging by the weight, it should be over 2 pounds, but after peeling off the bamboo shoots, there shouldn't be much meat. So after resting for a while, Jiang Chuyang continued to dig up winter bamboo shoots. 1, 2, 5. He didn't stop until he dug up about 10 winter bamboo shoots. Just about to tie it up with vines and take it home. A string of rabbit footprints leading to the northern mountain valley caught Jiang Chuyang's attention. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Fourth brother, step on one step. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 3 Fourth Brother, Step on One Step. Fourth brother, what's wrong? The little sweet potato beside him asked repeatedly. It's okay, you stay put and don't move. Maybe we really have some meat to eat today, Jiang Chuyang replied in a low voice. According to the experience of Rebirth, if a rabbit's footprints are found on a snowy day, then the rabbit is basically a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. This is not bragging, but the rabbits in the snow can't run at all and can only be trapped in the snow pit tinkering around. Especially for downhill rabbits, due to their short forelimbs, they can only roll along the way. If you hit something, you'll basically faint. And the person chasing behind, just pick up the ready-made ones and go home. He has encountered such things many times at the foot of Shinyum Mountain on snowy days. So, since I encountered the footprints of a wild rabbit this time, I naturally won't miss it no matter what. Although little sweet potato didn't know the inside story, he obediently nodded his head and said, "Fourth brother, you need to come back quickly. I'm afraid of being here alone." "Got it, if you're hungry, eat the sweet potatoes. Brother, we'll have winter bamboo shoots to eat later." After Jiang Chuyang turned around and gave a warning, he followed the footprints of the wild rabbit, stepped on the snow, and crunched towards the mountain depression to the north. On both sides of the mountain valley, there are silky thatched grass that is more than one person tall. Although covered by heavy snow, the basic outline can still be seen. And the footprints of the wild rabbit disappeared in the silk grass on the right side. Even close to the ground, a basketball-sized hole can be seen. Jiang Chuyang knew that if there were no accidents, there would definitely be wild rabbits inside. But to catch it, there is a certain difficulty. Because of the snow-covered silk grass, it is unclear what exactly is inside. I was just thinking of throwing out a few stones to check the specific hiding location of the rabbit. With a loud clatter, a large amount of snow fell from the big tree 50 meters ahead. The sound of snow falling to the ground was not loud, but it startled the two big gray rabbits hiding in the grass. That's right, there are two big gray rabbits, one of which ran to the east. And the other one ran down the downhill path of the mountain valley towards the southern bamboo forest. Jiang Chuyang saw this scene. How could he let go of this foolish gray rabbit that was going downhill? That was throwing the hoe and running after it. The big gray hare heard the footsteps of Jiang Chuyang chasing after him. That was a hasty acceleration of the escape pace. Unfortunately, it was running downhill. This leg sprint is not fast or second. The most fatal thing is that when you run, you get stuck in the snow. Under no other circumstances, the great gray hare could only escape from the snow pit by jumping. However, this jump, due to its short forelimbs, turned into a roll upon landing. At the beginning, the speed was quite fast. After all, rolling downhill has a gravity bonus. However, it was precisely for this reason that the great gray hare lost his little life. Because of rolling, the volume of the big gray rabbit increases. It turned into a snowball wrapped in snow. That is to say, the direction and speed of the big gray hare rolling down are no longer under its control. As the slope of the downhill road slows down, it becomes a captive prey in the snow pit. How could Jiang Chuyang have missed such a good opportunity? It was chasing after him with all his strength. Before the big gray hare crawled out of the snow pit, it was just a step forward. Kicked the big gray rabbit to death, and its limbs were still twitching incessantly. But Jiang Chuyang knew that this big gray rabbit was definitely not dead. In order to prevent escape, he stepped forward and made up for it. Then pull off the withered vines on the roadside. A colorful bundle was brought to the big gray hare. Just gasping for breath, he walked towards the mountain valley. This is not because young Jiang Chuyang's physical fitness is not good. But he was very hungry, and the chase just now had already exhausted his energy. This can walk to the mountain valley to pick up the hoe. That's already very good for Jiang Chuyang. Coming out of the valley, little sweet potato cheered and greeted him. "Wow, fourth brother is so amazing. Ha ha ha. Generally average, we'll stew this wild rabbit later, Jiang Chuyang laughed at the words. But. It's still alive. Little Sweet Potato pointed to the big gray rabbit bound by the vines, and quickly hid far away. What are you afraid of? Only living rabbit meat tastes good, comforted Jiang Chuyang. I'm not. The little rabbit is so cute, how can we kill Cha? Little Sweet Potato said with a shriveled mouth. What do you want? Jiang Chuyang asked angrily. At this time, he cannot be benevolent to women. Speaking of this big gray rabbit. That's the source of food. Otherwise I'm afraid I'll really starve to death. Little Sweet Potato did not answer Jiang Chuyang's words, but hesitantly looked at the big gray rabbit struggling in Jiang Chuyang's hands. It seems that she also wants to eat wild rabbit meat, but dare not eat it, after all, it is too cruel. Jiang Chuyang didn't pay attention to the sweet potatoes when he saw this, but instead tied up the winter bamboo shoots dug out from the ground using vines. After weighing it firmly, he took the lead and went home. Fourth brother, step on it, wait for me. Little Sweet Potato bit her index finger and quickly chased after her. Jiang Chuyang was afraid that Little Sweet Potato would fall, so he had to wait in place. Suddenly, he let out a "hey" sound. What's wrong, fourth brother? Little Sweet Potato raised her head. Do you think the earthen honeycomb under the eaves of Grandpa San's house is a bit strange? Jiang Chuyang asked. It's normal. I already knew. Little Sweet Potato followed and looked over. The earthen brick houses of Grandpa 3 and Grandpa 4 have already been moved out. Now it's completely abandoned, and it's normal to have wasps nesting under the eaves. However, for this reason, the villagers dare not approach the earthen brick houses of the third and fourth grandfathers. Afraid of being stung by wasps, it can be very deadly. I need to go over and take a look, maybe there's something good inside the earthen honeycomb. Jiang Chuyang heard this and put down the winter bamboo shoots in his hand, then handed the big gray rabbit to the Little Sweet Potato. Take it, don't let it run away. I don't. Little Sweet Potato quickly hid far away. You girl, Jiang Chuyang felt very helpless. Under no other circumstances, I gave the big gray hare a few kicks directly. After stumbling to death, he tied it to his waistband and walked towards the eaves of Grandpa San's house. Fourth brother, you need to be careful, Little Sweet Potato reminded anxiously. Got it. Jiang Chuyang waved his hand without looking back. After a moment, we arrived under the eaves. Looking up at the soil honeycomb, I realized that there were no more soil bees inside, only an empty shell left. This is not the point is that this soil honeycomb is long and hangs down from the eaves, at least 50 or 60 centimeters long. What does this mean? It means that before the formation of this soil honeycomb, there was already something hanging under the eaves. But what is this thing? Jiang Chuyang hesitated for a moment, then picked up a bamboo pole from the corner and poked it up. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. I know the proper principle of burying meat in a rice bowl. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. I know the proper principle of burying meat in a rice bowl not far away. Little Sweet Potato saw this scene and was so scared that he quickly hid. But unexpectedly, a large amount of mud debris fell off. But it didn't keep the hornet flying out. Jiang Chuyang quickly took 2 steps back. Avoided the falling mud and dust. Wait for the dust to settle and look up. Jiang Chuyang couldn't help but feel happy. The things inside the earthen honeycomb were exactly what he had guessed. It's a long string of smoked homemade cured meat. Judging by length and weight, I'm afraid it may weigh over 4 or 5 pounds. This is not the key yet, the key is as the honeycomb peels off. Surprisingly, the cured meat did not rot, and the dark red texture made Jiang Chuyang couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Seeing no other villagers around, the window without hesitation was a staircase, and the window climbed onto the beam of the eaves. Fourth brother, what are you doing? Little Sweet Potato ran over with short legs. Jiang Chuyang did not answer, but carefully untied the bacon rope tied to the crossbeam. After putting in a lot of effort, the boss finally took out a whole bunch of cured meat. You step aside, Jiang Chuyang said to the little sweet potato with his head tilted back, and then jumped directly onto the ground. Fourth brother, is this? Little Sweet Potato blinked his big eyes with curiosity in them. Preserved meat, your favorite thing is just right, Jiang Chuyang joked. Ah. How did you find out? Little Sweet Potato widened her eyes. There used to be many villagers passing by Grandpa San's house. But no one would ever suspect that there is a big string of preserved meat hidden inside this earthen honeycomb. Of course I guessed based on the shape of the earthen honeycomb. Jiang Chuyang smiled and then reminded, but you can't let other villagers in the village say that this cured meat is not ours. Before the third and fourth grandfathers moved out, their families were already very wealthy. So I left behind a string of cured meat and forgot to take it away. This is actually a very normal thing. But if other villagers, especially the Jiang family, found out, in the current situation where everyone is unable to eat enough, I will definitely try my best to divide the cured meat. So no matter what, it cannot be spread. Otherwise, it would be a big trouble. I know the right thing about burying meat in the rice bowl. Little Sweet Potato nodded quickly after hearing this. Fourth brother, you can bring me this cured meat. You can bring winter bamboo shoots and little rabbits. Sure. Jiang Chuyang handed the cured meat in his hand to Little Sweet Potato. Hee, there's plenty of meat today. Little Sweet Potato happily took it. But as a result, my face turned red and I couldn't even lift it. Originally, this string of cured meat was mixed with unclean soil honeycomb. The weight should be at least 7 or 8 pounds. With the small arms and legs of sweet potatoes, I can't even bring it up. Ha ha ha. Is it really embarrassing? Jiang Chuyang couldn't help but laugh as he looked at it. After touching the small head of the sweet potato, he took the cured meat and walked towards the roadside. Little Sweet Potato followed behind with her short legs, embarrassed. After Jiang Chuyang picked up the bundled winter bamboo shoots and carried them on her shoulder, she couldn't help but raise her head and ask, Fourth brother, we have meat, but we don't have rice and sweet potatoes. It's impossible to just have meat, right? Why? You don't like it? Jiang Chuyang joked. I like it, I really like it, but my mom may not agree, said Little Sweet Potato with a wry expression of concern. Why don't we just let her know? Jiang Chuyang replied. No, Charuru cannot hide it from mom. She always thinks of us first when she has something good. Xiao Sweet Potato refused the proposal. What I'm saying is that we'll eat it first. Can the two of us finish eating so much preserved meat? Jiang Chuyang picked up the preserved meat in his hand. Hee. That's right, Little Sweet Potato smiled happily. Hurry up and go home, it seems like it's snowing heavily again. Jiang Chuyang glanced at the sky and walked faster towards his home at the foot of Shinyu Mountain. Sweet Potato followed behind, quickly disappearing into the white snow scenery. In the kitchen, Jiang Chuyang handed the bundled winter bamboo shoots to Little Sweet Potato and said, Peel off a few and stir-fry the cured meat later. Brother, go deal with the wild rabbits. Well, no problem, it's just fourth brother. Can you not kill the little rabbit? Little Sweet Potato raised his head timidly and asked. No, Jiang Chuyang refused without even thinking about it. Okay. Little Sweet Potato had no choice but to lower her head and peel off the winter bamboo shoots. This girl, it's not good to be so kind. Jiang Chuyang didn't take care of the sweet potatoes, but went to the water tank with a kitchen knife to deal with the wild rabbits. Don't underestimate how to deal with rabbits. Without a certain level of knife skills and craftsmanship, there is no way to start. But Jiang Chuyang did not have such concerns. After all, he has nearly 20 years of experience as a chef. For dealing with wild rabbits, it's naturally a small matter. But when peeling rabbit skin, he left a hand behind. The entire rabbit skin was specially preserved intact. As for why we do this, it's because the little hands of sweet potatoes turn red from freezing in winter. In this case, use rabbit skin to make a pair of warm gloves for sweet potatoes. But it's necessary. Of course, for Jiang Chuyang. It's actually just a small matter, it's just a piece of cake. A whole gray wild rabbit was quickly handled by Jiang Chuyang. The rabbit's skin was hung on the wall to air dry, and the rabbit's internal organs were placed in a large bowl for processing when there was time. There is no way, as long as there is something to eat now, regardless of its quality, it cannot be thrown away. If it were decades later, I would definitely not eat rabbit organs. But now, in the face of hunger and cold. Naturally, I didn't think so much. And the wild rabbit meat is cut into pieces. Jiang Chuyang marinated some grain wine in a large bowl. I didn't have to worry too much, but instead went to deal with the wasp nest on top of the cured meat. As for where the grain wine comes from, it must have been hidden in the kitchen by that despicable father. Little sweet potato and her motherly Hongyu don't know, but Jiang Chuyang, the reborn one, is very clear. Moreover, according to the memory of his rebirth, Jiang Chuyang also knew that his father Jiang Yongkong had hidden more than 10 yuan in the hull. However, this is his father's last fortune, and under the last resort, Jiang Chuyang does not want to use it. But this grain wine is a necessity for cooking wild rabbit meat, so naturally it won't be polite. But now Jiang Chuyang has better ingredients than rabbit meat in his hands. That's the hornet's nest. If it's washed clean and soaked in hot water to drink, it's a great supplement. So when dealing with the soil honeycomb on the cured meat, Jiang Chuyang did not throw it away, but collected it and put it in a porcelain basin. It's almost time to go and clean the soil on the cured meat. But there was a crisp sound of chewing in my ear. What's going on? Jiang Chuyang shook his head and looked towards little sweet potato. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Foodie Sweet Potatoes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Foodie Sweet Potatoes. I saw the little one eating raw winter bamboo shoots with relish. He quickly ran over with heartache and stopped, saying, "Are you just that hungry? When my brother stews the wild rabbit meat, he will definitely make you eat enough. This raw winter bamboo shoot cannot be eaten, it will cause stomach problems." Oh. Little sweet potato quickly stopped eating winter bamboo shoots, but her big eyes did not leave the raw winter bamboo shoots in her hand. This is really hungry, otherwise there would be no such behavior. Jiang Chuyang had no choice but to pick up a kitchen knife and cut a small piece of washed lean meat, handing it to little sweet potato. "Eat this. Keep it hungry, and when brother stews the wild rabbit meat, you won't want to eat raw winter bamboo shoots anymore." Little sweet potato quickly reached out to take it. After tasting the taste of cured meat, the big eyes turned into crescent moon smiles. Jiang Chuyang cut another slice for the sweet potato and started washing the pot to prepare for stewing the wild rabbit. However, after looking at the seasoning box on the stove, my whole face turned ugly. Originally, besides edible salt and soy sauce, there were no other condiments besides the domestically grown Sichuan pepper. In such a situation, it would be strange if delicious rabbit meat could be stewed. However, even so, it is still difficult to defeat Jiang Chuyang. After thinking about it for a while, he left with his bamboo hat and firewood knife. A few minutes later, he returned with some more branches and withered leaves of the Sichuan pepper tree in his hand. As is well known, Sichuan pepper is a seasoning. Adding Sichuan pepper to dishes or hot pot for seasoning can create a tingling, fragrant, and spicy taste. And now it's winter, although Sichuan peppercorns can't be found on the tree. But the leaves and bark of Sichuan pepper trees can be substitutes. As for the Sichuan pepper bark, it naturally peels off from the branches. However, after being peeled off, it needs to be processed by special steaming methods to become a seasoning. This is naturally difficult for Jiang Chuyang, as he peeled off the bark of the Sichuan pepper tree from its branches. Put it in a big pot, add salt and water, and steam it. Because the temperature needs to be well controlled. He specially added a lot of dry firewood to the stove. During the steaming process, he put the winter bamboo shoots peeled from sweet potatoes in a large pot and blanched them for a while. Seeing that it didn't soften, I put it back in and scalded it again. Until the desired effect was achieved. He just placed it in the large bowl next to him. "Fourth brother, what are you doing here?" Little sweet potato looked at the winter bamboo shoots and meat in the big bowl, with curiosity in her big eyes. The reason for this expression is that the color of the winter bamboo shoots that have been scalded in a large pot with Sichuan pepper bark and leaves has already changed. It has turned into a color similar to orange peel and flesh, and there is also a faint aroma like Sichuan pepper. If it were anyone, they would have a big finger. As an authentic foodie, sweet potatoes are naturally a bit unbearable. Jiang Chuyang smiled as he looked at the little sweet potato and said, "Hot winter bamboo shoots." After being processed in this way, the winter bamboo shoots no longer have the bitterness and tingling taste they used to have. Really? Little sweet potato blinked her big eyes and reached out to pick up a scalded winter bamboo shoot to eat. Ah. No. Jiang Chuyang tried to dissuade, but in the end, he didn't say anything. After all, the processed winter bamboo shoots can now be imported. In such a situation, persuading. It seems to have no meaning anymore. And after tasting the processed taste of winter bamboo shoots, the sweet potato. His big eyes lit up and he said, "Wow, really? These winter bamboo shoots are just right, and they have a tingling, spicy, and fragrant taste. It's just a bit light. If only we could add a little more salt." "Silly sister, the problem is that this winter bamboo shoot hasn't been made into a dish yet, okay?" Jiang Chuyang finally took the sweet potato. "But I didn't bother with the sweet potatoes anymore. Because the cooking temperature of Sichuan pepper leaves and Sichuan pepper bark is already about the same. It's time to fish it out and start the next process of stewing rabbits." Seeing that there was not even a leak in the house, I had no choice but to dig it out with my hands. Anyway, in short, it's winter now, and if the water temperature is higher, it's okay. It's perfect for keeping warm. After doing all of this, I was about to take a knife and cut the hot winter bamboo shoots. Only when I turned around did I realize that there were only 4 left that had been eaten by the sweet potatoes. "It's not you." Jiang Chuyang wanted to say a few words about sweet potatoes, but in the end, he couldn't say it. After all, if it weren't for being really hungry, it's impossible to eat so many boiled winter bamboo shoots in one go. Hee hee. "Fourth brother, this winter bamboo shoot is just right." Little sweet potato was looking embarrassed and quickly handed over the unfinished winter bamboo shoot in his hand. "Brother won't eat it, otherwise we won't have the stewed rabbit meat later." Jiang Chuyang reached out and took it, placing it on the cutting board and cutting it. The remaining 4 were not missed, so they were cut and placed in a large pot. Because the water in the big pot has the smell of steamed Sichuan pepper bark and leaves. Not long after, a fragrance drifted out. This made little sweet potato salivate as he watched. But Jiang Chuyang treated it as if he hadn't seen it. Then pour all the rabbit meat preserved in baijiu into the big pot. After adding a few spoons of salt, a handful of dried Sichuan peppers, and a spoonful of water. Just cover the pot and add firewood to simmer. It was possible not to add water because the remaining water in the large pot was just right. But when Jiang Chuyang thought about the current situation of insufficient food at home, It's not good to decide to add more water to solve the real situation. Because stewing rabbit meat soup is the most nutritious. Drinking it can not only satisfy hunger, but also supplement nutrition, which is killing two birds with one stone. 20 minutes later, due to the special treatment of Sichuan pepper bark and leaves in the large pot, the charming aroma of stewed wild rabbits quickly wafted out from the cracks in the lid of the pot. This made the little sweet potato standing on the side swallow saliva straight. Finally, he couldn't help but ask Jiang Chuyang, who was adding firewood, "Fourth brother, when did you become so powerful? How come these boiled winter bamboo shoots are so fragrant?" "Fragrant? Didn't you see me putting rabbit meat in the big pot?" Jiang Chuyang smiled. "I'm not exactly rabbit meat, it's so cute," protested little sweet potato with a shrunken mouth. "Okay, I didn't plan to give you anything to eat either," said Jiang Chuyang. "Humph. I'm ignoring you." Little sweet potato turned around and ran out of the kitchen. But a few minutes later, he ran back probing his head. As for the reason, the aroma of stewed rabbit meat. She can't bear it anymore. Jiang Chuyang looked at it and smiled. "I didn't pay attention to sweet potatoes either." But instead, he lifted the lid of the pot and picked up a piece of wild rabbit meat with chopsticks to taste it. Seeing that it was already cooked and crispy, and the numb, spicy, and fragrant taste of Sichuan pepper had also been absorbed, I couldn't help but nod. "Fourth brother, are you so good?" Little sweet potato swallowed a mouthful of saliva on the side. "Not good, and besides, you're not good at wild rabbit meat," Jiang Chuyang joked back. "I don't believe it," little sweet potato stomped her foot. "So, why don't you try it?" Jiang Chuyang picked up a large piece of wild rabbit meat with his chopsticks and handed it to little sweet potato's mouth. I'll just take a small sip," and it was fourth brother who forced me to taste it. Little sweet potato hesitated for a long time, but in the end, he still opened his mouth and took a bite. After tasting the crispy and delicious spicy taste of wild rabbit meat, the whole person was stunned. She only then realized that this wild rabbit meat was an unparalleled delicacy. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Uncle, I'm here to play in your house. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Uncle, I'm here to play in your house. What's wrong? Jiang Chuyang asked. No, not much. Little sweet potato suddenly swallowed the wild rabbit meat that Jiang Chuyang had picked up on his chopsticks, and then quickly ran to the cupboard, taking out the bowl and chopsticks. Fourth brother, fill it up for me, the nest should be filled with rabbit meat. Didn't you say that rabbits are so cute that they can't be eaten? Jiang Chuyang suppressed a smile, his face teasing. Did I say that? Little sweet potato asked with a tilted head, his big eyes full of seriousness. But in reality, her heart was empty, afraid that Jiang Chuyang would expose her shortcomings. Cough cough. You didn't say it. Jiang Chuyang would still give the sweet potato this face, and he took the bowl and helped scoop up the rabbit meat. Of course, soup is also essential. Little sweet potato sat on the side with a small stool and started eating big mouthfuls. Even though her cheeks were bulging, she didn't bother to worry too much. Eat slowly, no one will compete with you. Jiang Chuyang was worried that the sweet potato might choke. Trouble, trouble. Little sweet potato waved his hand vaguely. Fourth brother, let's go catch the rabbit when it's just finished this time. Its meat is really delicious. With a popping sound, Jiang Chuyang was drinking soup. That was a shot out, with a narrow smile on his face. No, you think rabbits are raised by your family. If you want to catch them, they don't want dignity, do they? Hee hee. It's the same. Little sweet potato smiled along, with a hint of embarrassment in her laughter. Hurry up and eat while it's hot. If it's cold, it won't taste good. Hungry Jiang Chuyang couldn't bear it anymore. After scooping up a large bowl of steaming soup and a few pieces of wild rabbit meat, he carried a small stool and sat next to the stove to eat and drink. Because it's snowing, it's really a bit cold. Jiang Chuyang had no choice but to do so. I had to move out the grain wine that my father had hidden under the stove. After pouring himself a small bowl, he put it back. Xiao's sweet potato saw this scene and quickly walked over to smell it. Seeing the pungent grain wine, she quickly ran away and continued to eat her wild rabbit meat. The reason for this is that the sweet potato has stolen grain wine. That taste was so unpleasant for her, that's why she despised it so much. Jiang Chuyang smiled at the funny look on little sweet potato. He knew that the little guy had been tricked while stealing grain wine. At the moment, I didn't go into too much trouble, but instead took a sip of grain wine and a sip of rabbit meat to eat and drink. Don't mention it, just take a few sips of grain wine. I suddenly stopped feeling cold and hungry. Even a stream of heat flows from the heart to the whole body. This feeling is very comfortable. But Jiang Chuyang dared not drink too much. Because of my young body, which is 15 or 16 years old. I can't drink much alcohol at all. It's not like that 1 or 2 gene of Baijiu will be fine decades later. However, the body collapsed due to uncontrolled eating and drinking. Since this has been reborn, it is natural to understand moderation. I don't want to have a big belly after 30, just like before my rebirth. A wild rabbit is actually not enough for Jiang Chuyang and little sweet potato to eat. After all, they haven't had enough to eat in the past few months, and most of them are hungry. But even so, their siblings did not finish eating the wild rabbit meat. But he left a large portion for his mother. But they drank a lot of rabbit soup. Especially sweet potatoes, their stomachs are bulging and they are burping profusely. Upon seeing this, Jiang Chuyang picked up the lid and covered the large pot, saying, "Sister. As usual, you go feed the chickens, and brother goes feed the cows." In winter, because the green grass has withered, the oxen cannot be raised freely, so they can only use straw to feed them and bring water to drink. If you don't take good care of yourself or forget about it, then if there are no cows or fields to plow in the spring next year, or if something unexpected happens, I'm afraid the whole family will drink the wind. As a reborn person, Jiang Chuyang naturally knows the importance of farming cows for the whole family, so what he should do at home must be done properly. Of course, if I remember correctly, it's also his turn to free-range the cattle today. I know. Little sweet potato nodded and soaked the rice bran in the basin, then walked out of the kitchen with short legs and walked towards the backyard. Cluck cluck. Cluck cluck. Xiao Huang and Xiaohe quickly came out to have a meal. Xiao Huang and Xiaohe are the names of little hens. Weighing only about half a kilogram, there are a total of 5 raised at home. There were originally 3 old hens, but because there was no food left at home, so they sold them all in exchange for a month's worth of food. But so far, they have all been eaten up. Jiang Chuyang learned about these through memory. The whole person couldn't help but smile bitterly. Because his family's life in 1979 was really poor and destitute. In addition to the contracted more than 10 acres of farmland. A brick house with a backyard outside. The other assets are really gone. There are no big fat pigs in the pigsty, only bundles of dry firewood. The rice jar in the kitchen is also cleaner than the pocket, probably not even a mouse would care about it. As for deposits, for 7 or 9 years, they earned money by paying wages and exchanging tickets for goods. In the minds of most people, there is no such concept at all. No, it should be said that there is no such idea in rural areas. Thinking of this, Jiang Chuyang smiled self-deprecatingly. Putting aside his thoughts, he picked up a rolled straw and walked towards the cattle pen. Stepping on the snow and crunching, I haven't walked out 2 meters yet. Little sweet potato ran out of the backyard in a panic and said, "Fourth brother, it's not good. Our little yellow is sick and refuses to eat rice bran." Is that right? Jiang Chuyang placed the straw on the ground and quickly walked into the backyard with little sweet potato. In the firewood room, Jiang Chuyang saw the little yellow in the mouth of the sweet potato, squatting in a corner sickly, without even responding to the footsteps from far to near. If it had been in the past, I'm afraid I would have been flapping my wings and running away long ago. Jiang Chuyang frowned and checked, seeing that the situation of his 4 little hens was also somewhat abnormal. Immediately, he quickly closed the door of the firewood room and picked up all 5 little hens. Then use a chicken coop and walk towards the kitchen. Fourth brother, are you going to stew them all? Little sweet potato, following behind, raised his head and asked repeatedly. What are you thinking? They've been frozen, we need to let them go to a warm place, Jiang Chuyang replied with a bitter smile. Oh. Little sweet potato was a bit disappointed. She thought Jiang Chuyang was going to kill and stew all 5 little hens. Jiang Chuyang didn't know little sweet potato's thoughts, but he didn't expose them. But instead, a firewood stove was raised and the chicken coop was set aside. After about 10 minutes, Xiao Huang was indeed energized. I actually got into a fight with Xiao He in the chicken coop. Wow! Fourth brother is amazing. Little sweet potato's big eyes lit up as he watched this scene. What's so powerful about this? Jiang Chuyang opened the chicken cage and released all 5 little hens. Sister, please watch them and don't let them run out of the kitchen. Brother, go feed the cows. Remember to come back early, fourth brother. Little sweet potato nodded his head. Jiang Chuyang turned around and walked outside before picking up the straw lying on the ground. On the mountain road to the east, a childish shout came from. Uncle, uncle. I'm here to play in your house. Hurry up and call the aunt to come and pick me up. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. 007 Uncle is so amazing, the meat he makes is just as good as sesame. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7007 Uncle is so amazing, the meat he makes is much better than sesame. It was Jiang Chuyang's second sister's daughter, Little Rice and Vegetable Roll, who was less than 3 years old this year. She was wearing a thick cotton jacket, stumbling along the mountain path step by step, stepping on the snow. Behind the little one, Mother Jiang Dongju closely followed, carrying half a bag of sweet potatoes on her shoulder. Seeing Jiang Chuyang hear the shout and turn his head to look over, he waved his hand and said, Chuyang, is our mother at home? No, go dig the canal. Before Jiang Chuyang could speak, little sweet potato quickly ran out of the kitchen and answered Jiang Dongju's question first. She was so happy when she saw the Little Rice and Vegetable Roll that she just jumped up with cheers. However, he didn't greet him at the first moment, but turned around and closed the kitchen door before jogging all the way up the mountain path. You slow down. Jiang Chuyang shook his head as he looked at little sweet potato. Trouble, trouble. Little red potato waved her hand without looking back, but the next second she fell into the snow. But she was stubborn and didn't cry. Even though she broke her knee, she pretended to be calm and smiled back at Jiang Chuyang, and then continued to run towards the Little Rice and Vegetable Roll. Jiang Dongju on the mountain road clearly saw that when little sweet potato turned her head, tears welled up. Obviously, it hurts from the fall. But the little one didn't reach out to wipe his tears. It seems that she is afraid that Jiang Chuyang will scold her. After all, if you don't listen at home, you will be beaten by bamboo sticks. However, the Little Rice and Vegetable Roll has exposed the disguise of little sweet potato. Auntie, are you taking risks? Why are you crying? I'm not tears, it's rain, explained little sweet potato. Really? Xiaofanchuan tilted his head and didn't believe it. This makes little sweet potato very angry, I don't know what to do. Jiang Dongju put down half of the bag of sweet potatoes in her hand and squatted down to check the knees of the little sweet potato. I just broke my cotton pants, and there's nothing wrong with the knees inside. At the moment, there was a long sigh of relief. Can you stop being so reckless in the future? Hee hee. I know. Little Sweet Potato nodded awkwardly. I'm afraid her reckless nature won't change in her lifetime. Jiang Chuyang shook his head and walked over, helping to carry half a bag of sweet potatoes. Second sister, do you have anything to do with our mother? For some reason, Jiang Chuyang dared not look directly at Jiang Dongju. Because the young ginger winter chrysanthemum after rebirth. There is too much difference from what I remember. Although very young. But the thin cheekbones protruded. This is not the point yet, the point is that all the cotton clothes and pants on the body are patched. Even the rain shoes on my feet are patched with patches. What does this mean? It means that Jiang Dongju's family is not wealthy either. Otherwise, it wouldn't be like this. However, even if things are not going well, I also brought half a bag of sweet potatoes from home. For Jiang Chuyang. It's really moving. Of course, before getting married, Jiang Dongju. The relationship with Jiang Chuyang itself is the best one. In such a situation, it is normal to occasionally send some sweet potatoes and other miscellaneous grains to help. Jiang Dongju didn't know what Jiang Chuyang was thinking. After rubbing his frozen hands, she said, "Let's talk inside. It's a bit cold outside." Okay. Okay. Jiang Chuyang took the lead and walked towards the adobe house at the foot of Xinyu Mountain. Jiang Dongju, the stronger one, is followed by small rice and vegetable roll and sweet potatoes. Before walking 2 meters, Jiang Dongju asked, "Did you have breakfast at Chuyang?" "I have eaten it," Jiang Chuyang replied. "Perfect stewed rabbit meat, it's so perfect," Little Sweet Potato said after touching her bulging belly. What? Jiang Dongju thought she had heard wrong. She is not unaware of the financial conditions at home. If we could catch a wild rabbit, the first thing we would think of is going to the market to sell it for food. Instead of stewing and eating such a waste. Little Rice and Vegetable Roll also stopped, looked up at Jiang Chuyang and said, "Uncle, why don't you call the nest when you are stewing rabbits? The nest has been full of meat for a long time. There's still something in the pot. But you can only eat half, and the other half must be left for Grandma Cha." Little Sweet Potato replied before Jiang Chuyang could speak. "Let's go, just cut the meat." Xiaofanchuan heard what Xiaoyama said, and even cheered and ran away. Sweet Potato followed behind. "Unfortunately, we haven't run 5 meters yet. 2 people fell into the snow and couldn't even climb up. Among them, the Little Rice and Vegetable Roll was so heavily dressed that it fell like a turtle on all 4s. Uncle, don't look at it. Hurry to help the nest up." Okay. Okay. Jiang Chuyang had no choice but to accelerate his pace. "Chuyang, did you really stew wild rabbit meat this morning?" asked Jiang Dongju, who followed behind. "Well, I was lucky enough to catch it on the back mountain of Grandpa San's house because there was no food or anything to eat at home, so I stewed it with Little Sweet Potato," Jiang Chuyang replied truthfully. "Then you must not have cooked well, it's really a waste," Jiang Dongju frowned. "No. You're wrong, the wild rabbit meat stewed by fourth brother is delicious, and the winter bamboo shoots are also very good." The Little Sweet Potato who got up corrected. "Really?" Jia Dongju was a little surprised. "Don't you know when you wait to have some food?" Jiang Chuyang picked up the Little Rice and Vegetable Roll and then picked it up with one hand. Only then did he find that although the small face of Xiaofanchuan was round, the whole person was very light. That is to say, it may be extreme malnutrition. Jiang Chuyang, who noticed this, felt very uncomfortable in his heart. But he didn't say much, but accelerated his pace and walked towards the earthen brick house at the foot of Xinyu Mountain. When he arrived, Jiang Chuyang put down the sweet potatoes and the small rice and vegetable roll in his hands. Second sister, I have to feed the oxen, otherwise I will be hungry and get into trouble. There is still half a pot of rabbit stew in the pot. You can leave a bowl for my mother. Got it. Jiang Dongju led the little rice and vegetable roll, carried the sweet potatoes and walked into the kitchen. After kicking off the snow on his feet, little sweet potato quickly followed behind. But the next second, I almost bumped into Jiang Dongju. What's wrong, second sister? Little sweet potato tilted her head and asked repeatedly. Where did this come from? Jiang Dongju pointed to the preserved meat hanging next to the cupboard, her eyes filled with shock. After all, in the 1970s, this cured meat was very valuable, especially for such a large string. Hee hee. Fourth brother found it in the abandoned brick house of third grandpa's house, little sweet potato replied with a smile. Really? Jiang Dongju was a bit skeptical. Well, really. Little sweet potato nodded his head seriously. Did any other Jiang family see it? Jiang Dongju asked. If I see it, I'm afraid there won't be much difference between such a large string of cured meat. So it must be hidden, and it must be hidden tightly. Don't worry, no one will see such heavy snow. Little sweet potato climbed up the stove with a long stool and struggled to open the lid. You see, this is the wild rabbit meat stewed by fourth brother. It's fragrant, isn't it? It's really fragrant, like Sichuan pepper. Jiang Dongju sniffed and was about to take her chopsticks to taste it. Xiaofanchuan first stepped on the bench and climbed to the stove, then stretched out his hand on his stomach and grabbed a piece of rabbit meat and put it into his mouth. After tasting the taste, he said, Wow. It's good and just, my uncle is really good, and the meat is much better than numbness. You little girl, don't lie down next to the pot to eat even if it's delicious. Jiang Dongju looked at it with a headache and quickly reached out to pick it up. My little ancestor, can I scoop it for you if you want to eat it? But it seems cold, we need to heat it up, little sweet potato reminded. Well, Jiang Dongju brought firewood and sat on a small stool, heating it up to stew wild rabbit meat. Seeking recommended tickets and collecting them. This book has already been signed, but due to special circumstances recently, the signing status may be changed a few days later. Therefore, everyone is not worried about becoming a eunuch. Please have a recommendation ticket and collect it. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Funny Little Rice and Vegetable Roll. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Funny Little Rice and Vegetable Roll. Xiaofanchuan wants to climb the stove again. But I dare not. After all, Jiang Dongju is staring at her. Seeing this, the little sweet potato held the little hand of the little rice and vegetable roll and said, Don't worry, the rabbit meat will hurt when it is cold, but it will not be heated. Oh, that. Can we just wait a little more? Xiaofanchuan asked timidly, and swallowed at the same time. For her, this stewed rabbit meat is truly an unparalleled delicacy. It's the first time I've tasted such delicious food since I've grown so big. Of course not a problem, just leave a bowl for Grandma Cha, said little sweet potato Lien. Don't listen to Xiaofanchuan. She came here after a bowl of sweet potato porridge for breakfast. Jiang Dongju hurriedly interrupted their chat. But, the nest is hungry. Little rice and vegetable roll tried to lift up his clothes to show Jiang Dongju his belly. But in the end, she gave up. As for being willing, she wore too much. This little hand can't even touch the clothes. Jiang Dongju couldn't help but smile as she watched this scene. I can't even heat up the stewed rabbit meat for a while. I immediately got up and walked to the side of the cupboard, picked up the cured meat and prepared to hide it. After all, such precious things can only be taken out for cooking during the Chinese New Year. But little sweet potato looked anxiously and said, Second sister, fourth brother has already said that I will have roasted winter bamboo shoots with preserved meat for lunch. You hide it and I won't be able to eat it. This is not just a festive occasion during the Chinese New Year. What kind of meat do you eat? Jiang Dongju said with a dark face before leaving the kitchen. However, Jiang Chuyang returned after feeding the oxen. He was so anxious that he almost cried when he saw little sweet potato. After a moment of confusion, he repeatedly asked, "What's wrong?" Second sister. You asked little sweet potato, you actually thought about having cured meat at noon, you're so beautiful. Jiang Dongju revealed the inside story. This cured meat has been hanging under the eaves of Grandpa San's house for several years. Why not eat it? Jiang Chuyang couldn't help but laugh and cry when he heard this. Second sister, you came just right today. Let's have lunch together and leave later. Really eating? Jiang Dongju widened her eyes. Well, it's really delicious, Jiang Chuyang nodded. Hee hee. Little sweet potato was extremely happy. When the three of them were chatting, Xiaofanchuan secretly climbed onto the stove, lifted the lid of the pot and prepared to eat rabbit stew secretly, but the hot air made him shout loudly. What are you doing? Jiang Dongju put down the bacon, turned around and hurriedly picked up the small rice and vegetable roll, with his backhand pointing at his buttocks. I call you gluttonous, I call you gluttonous, I can't kill you. I said so, but I didn't really go down. It truly explains what it means to say the harshest words and do the most cowardly things. Of course, it is also a manifestation of being spoiled by a mother. Sobbing. Xiaofanchuan didn't feel it, but looked up and cried. All right. All right. Seeing this, Jiang Chuyang stopped Jiang Dongju and reached out to take the little rice and vegetable roll. He was relieved that it didn't burn anywhere. Is it normal for a child to be naughty? Why do you hit her? If you don't hit her, you'll be at a loss, you know. Jiang Dongju was so angry. Ouch. It's not as serious as you said. Jiang Chuyang coaxed up a small rice and vegetable roll. Seeing the little one staring at the stewed rabbit meat in the big pot, he couldn't help but laugh and cry. He took a bowl and chopsticks, filled a large bowl, and placed it on a nearby stool. Miraculously, Xiaofanchuan stopped crying and making troubles. A smile also appeared on her small face, and she squatted beside the stool, devouring her food with great fanfare. That's right, it's just wolfing it down. This scene made Jiang Chuyang look heartbroken. Jiang Dongju also couldn't bear to turn her head to one side. Jia, have some wild rabbit soup. You can eat less meat, we must leave a few pieces for Mom. Jiang Chuyang guessed Jiang Dongju's thoughts and sighed lightly before scooping up a large bowl of soup and handing 4 or 5 pieces of rabbit meat to Jiang Dongju. I'll just have soup, Jiang Dongju reached out and took it. After taking a light sip, her eyes lit up. Sure. You're really good at stewing wild rabbit soup. Hee hee. Just fooling around, Jiang Chuyang said with a faint smile and perfunctory tone. I think so. Jiang Dongju sat beside the little rice and vegetable roll and drank the rabbit soup. He didn't want to eat the rabbit meat, but he finally moved his chopsticks. After tasting the taste, he finally knew why the little rice and vegetable roll had climbed onto the stove with perseverance. Turns out this rabbit meat has really been stewed to the level. Besides the numbness, spiciness, and fragrance of Sichuan pepper. The taste is surprisingly crispy but not rotten. Take a bite to leave a lingering fragrance on your lips and teeth. Taking 2 bites is even more unforgettable. I was about to take a 3rd bite when I suddenly realized it. There is only 1 piece left in the bowl. Ma, is it right? The little rice and vegetable roll raised his head and asked, looking at Jiang Dongju eating. Well, really well, your uncle's rabbit stew has really reached a high level. Jiang Dongju looked at the rabbit meat in the small rice and vegetable roll bowl and saw that there was still a lot of rabbit meat. He immediately extended his chopsticks. You ate so much sweet potato porridge in the morning, so you should eat less rabbit meat, don't you know? I don't know. The little rice and vegetable roll quickly ran with chopsticks and bowls on short legs. You child, Jiang Dongju looked awkwardly. How about? I'll give you a few more pieces of wild rabbit meat. Jiang Chuyang suggested teasingly. I won't eat it anymore. Jiang Dongju drank all the soup in her bowl and then turned to look at Jiang Chuyang. Chuyang, I went back to my mother's house today to borrow money. Your brother-in-law's older sister is going to turn 40 in a few days, but we don't even have a penny on hand now, so. Speaking of which, Jiang Dongju sighed lightly and couldn't continue. Obviously, if it weren't for the fact that we couldn't borrow money, she wouldn't say that to Jiang Chuyang. And the portion money must be given. So think before and after. I have to come to my mother's house to borrow it. How much money do you want to borrow, second sister? Jiang Chuyang hesitated and asked repeatedly. 3 yuan, if you really don't have it, 2 yuan will do, Jiang Dongju replied. The reason for borrowing this number is because the husband's elder sister used to give his family only 2 yuan. And now that it needs to be returned, it naturally needs to be added a little bit. But it's not really there at my parents' house. That can only be given 2 yuan. I'm not sure how much money our mother has, let's wait until she comes back at noon. Jiang Chuyang replied truthfully. But if nothing unexpected happens, my mother may have no money left on her. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a single grain of rice in the rice jar. But he cannot reveal this insider. Saying it may make Jiang Dongju very embarrassed. And Jiang Chuyang also knows. The second sister's life at her husband's house is very difficult now. As for the reason, it is because the first child gave birth to a daughter. In rural areas, most parents-in-law have a serious preference for sons over daughters. Jiang Dongju's mother-in-law is no exception, and there are even more. However, Jiang Dongju is a very strong woman. I never told my family. If Jiang Chuyang hadn't been reborn, I'm afraid I won't even know the inside story. So he is very tactful in borrowing money, afraid of hurting Jiang Dongju's heart in the future. Because no matter what, her family is now Jiang Dongju's only reliance. It's not important not to borrow money, what's important is to always support Jiang Dongju. Okay. I'll wait for Mom to come back at noon and ask her. Jiang Chuyang didn't know what Jiang Chuyang was thinking in his heart. He thought he could borrow money if he left her behind. After laughing happily, he helped clean the kitchen. Regarding updates, I would like to inform you that one ticket is scheduled for 6:30 a.m. and one ticket is scheduled for 6:30 p.m. every day. If you want to add updates, please add one chapter for every 1,000 recommended tickets and collections. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Changes starting from now. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Changes starting from now. Jiang Chuyang saw Jiang Dongju's thoughts. After frowning, he walked straight towards the main hall. Fourth brother, why are you going? Little Sweet Potato couldn't help but ask. Go prepare some bait and see if you can catch a few fish in the river to make boiled fish to eat, Jiang Chuyang replied. But in reality, he went to the bed in the main room to retrieve the dozen or so yuan that his father, Jiang Yongkang, had hidden. He had no intention of using the money at the current stage, but second sister urgently needed it. And it's the kind of money that can buy face at my husband's house. So now he can only ignore so much. First, take out the money and use it. It's not too late for him to return it when he earns money in the future. Because if I remember correctly, he is the father of a black sheep. It will take 8 to 5 years to be released from prison along the coast. Little Sweet Potato didn't know Jiang Chuyang's thoughts. He wanted to join in the fun, but Jiang Dongju stopped him and said, Little Sweet Potato, please be honest with second sister. Has Jiang Chuyang been stimulated recently? I don't know. Sweet Potato shook its head. Recently, she and her fourth brother have been staying at home every day. If you're stimulated, you might end up going hungry. But doesn't it seem like this is a normal thing in Jiangzhou village? Really not. For example, did he get scolded by our mother? Or was it made fun of by Wang Dafu in the village? Jiang Dongju asked again. In her opinion. If not stimulated, how could such a high-level stewed rabbit be made? How could it be that there was a big change in temperament? I cooked and ate the cured meat I got from the abandoned house of my third grandfather at noon. If this were left in the past, I'm afraid it would be hidden very tightly. Not to mention not letting her know, even the sweet potatoes may not be visible. Mom only said that she wants fourth brother and third uncle to learn carpentry skills, and she's just talking nonsense. Little sweet potato raised her small head and looked at Jiang Dongju with a puzzled expression in her big eyes. As for Wang Dafu, he's just hiding at home drinking on this snowy day. He won't pay attention to us. Wang Dafu is the richest man in Jiangzhou village. Not to mention owning the only tractor in Jiangzhou village. It is said that his wealth has also reached tens of thousands, making him a true household with 10,000 yuan. The 10,000 yuan household in the late 1970s and early 1980s was quite complicated. Compared to billionaires decades later, it is rarer and also the envy of everyone. After all, before the reform and opening up in 1979, anyone who was too wealthy would be investigated. However, this Wang Dafu is not a good person, he is a notorious stingy old man. According to rumors from the villagers, they refuse to spend a penny when marrying their daughter. Of course, these are not things that little sweet potato should care about. What she is most concerned about is whether the big bad dog of Wang Dafu's family has died or not. Because in the past, when herding cattle and passing by Wang Dafu's doorstep, they were always chased by big dogs. Jiang Chuyang has also been chased by the big bad dog several times, and every time he argues with Wang Dafu, he is ridiculed. This happened before Jiang Dongju got married, so she just asked little sweet potato like that. Ask Jiang Chuyang if he has recently been ridiculed by Wang Dafu, a wealthy and ruthless old man. Seeing that there was no such thing, Jiang Dongju was puzzled and said, "It's really strange. Since Chuyang hasn't been stimulated, why do I always feel that he has changed? He has become more generous. Why do I think fourth brother has changed at all?" Little sweet potato pouted and said, "It's because second sister, you've been back less recently, haven't you?" For her, the fourth brother is originally the most generous one in the family. Maybe. Jiang Dongju smiled ironically. Seeing that the little rice and vegetable roll had a round stomach and staring at the few rabbit meat in the big pot, he could not help but blacken his face. "You are trying to have a look. Believe it or not, I will buckle your eyes. Don't look, don't look." The little rice and vegetable roll belched, followed the little sweet potato and went to play with Jiang Chuyang. In the hall, located by the window, there is an abandoned wooden bed. There are many miscellaneous items on the bed. Jiang Chuyang, who walked in, didn't pay attention to these things, but instead squatted down and groped under the bed. He didn't stop exploring until he found a jar for pickled vegetables. Then the jar was carefully moved out. Upon opening the lid, there was indeed a thick stack of money inside. However, most of them are split tickets and corner tickets, with only one ticket for 1 yuan. Jiang Chuyang counted twice, a total of 18.50.6 cents. Then he put it into his shirt pocket. It's not easy to lose it. He returned the pickled vegetable jar with satisfaction. I don't know why, I was still a bit nervous. But after receiving the money, he felt a little at ease. Because his own spendthrift father owes too much to the people in the family. At this point, you can take out and use the money. In fact, he is redeeming his father. Of course, Jiang Chuyang also has his own ideas. As long as these 10 or so yuan are used well, then utilize the experience of rebirth. Changing the current poverty situation at home should not be a dream. This idea fell and I was about to leave the main room. But little sweet potato ran in with little rice and vegetable roll on short legs. Brother C, why are you hiding here alone? I didn't do anything. Jiang Chuyang couldn't help but laugh and cry at the words. My younger sister is doing well in everything else. Just like a follower every day. It's a bit annoying to ask this question after me. However, thinking so, Jiang Chuyang still hasn't said it. As a reborn person, I deeply understand that such behavior is my sister's trust in me. If you don't believe in yourself, you won't have such behavior. So, now he should cherish it. Instead of being upset. What's so strange about you not doing anything? Little sweet potato glanced around and said, didn't you mention making bait to go fishing for a few fish in the river just to catch it? Where's the bait? It's not done yet. Can you stop acting like a housekeeper? Jiang Chuyang said as he walked towards the backyard. He. The little sweet potato was not angry at all, but happily led the little rice and vegetable roll behind. In the firewood shed in the backyard, Jiang Chuyang brought some rice bran and dried mugwort leaves. I can be seen everywhere in rural areas in the 1970s and 1980s. As for the dried mugwort leaves, they must be used for deworming or bathing to kill viruses. This is no longer a secret in rural areas, but something that every household knows. However, the dried mugwort leaves and rice bran that Jiang Chuyang brought today are not used for deworming. But it's used to make super bait for fishing. It is called super bait. That's because there's a secret recipe inside. And it's also a unique secret recipe. Decades later, he will be the only one in charge. Of course, there are many exclusive recipes like Jiang Chuyang, all related to the chef's profession. It was precisely because of this that he rose to fame before his rebirth, running a restaurant and becoming a billionaire. But now it's taken out for fishing, which is actually too wasteful for him to use an ox knife to kill chickens. But even so, Jiang Chuyang still took action. After installing mugwort leaves and rice bran on a porcelain plate. Just walk towards the kitchen. Thank you all for the recommended votes. Thank you sincerely. I saw several readers who came from Reborn Craftsman and Reborn Agricultural Era. The motivation to write it down instantly came into play. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Mao Du Cha is a bait that seduces the nest with its fragrance. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Mao Du Cha is a bait that seduces the nest with its fragrance. Fourth brother, I've fed Xiao Huang and Xiaohe before, said the little sweet potato behind him. Obviously, she thought Jiang Chuyang was going to feed the chickens. Upon hearing this, Jiang Chuyang shook his head and said, I'm not going to feed the chickens, but to stir-fry the bait for fishing. Stir-fry fishing bait. Little sweet potato widened her eyes as she listened. The little rice and vegetable roll is also crooked with a small head, which is somewhat incomprehensible. Because in their cognition, the bait for fishing is not always dug earthworms. Isn't it just using green grass? How did this get to Jiang Chuyang? Surprisingly, it needs to be stir-fried. Jiang Chuyang didn't explain, but walked into the kitchen. There was still firewood in the stove, and the stewed wild rabbit in the big pot was also placed in a large bowl by the second sister in the cupboard. Immediately, he picked up a brush and started washing the big pot. After finishing, add firewood to make the fire burn up. Chuyang, what are you doing? Jiang Dongju looked at Lian and asked. Although there is enough firewood to burn in Jiangjia village, it cannot be wasted like this. Uncle said to stir-fry the bait for fishing. Little rice and vegetable roll replied with a milky voice. Well, I really don't know what fourth brother is up to, followed little sweet potato. Jiang Chuyang didn't explain, but left the kitchen to look for another material. After a moment, he came back. I have an extra ball of yellow mud in my hand. Then according to the proportion. Mixed with rice bran and dried mugwort leaves. Seeing something dry, he added a little more water. Until it feels just right, not scattered or clumped up. He poured the mixture of talents into a large pot. Stir fry with a spatula. Seeing that the fire was not strong enough, I immediately added a few more sticks of firewood. Chuyang, can you stop messing around? Jiang Dongju beside her became anxious. It cost several yuan to buy a big pot. If it gets fried and damaged, I'm afraid I'll be beaten to death by my mother. After all, the situation at home is here. But Jiang Chuyang turned a deaf ear and only had the mixture from the big pot in his eyes. And the speed of stir-frying on hand is getting faster and faster. It's a pity that Jiang Dongju, small sweet potatoes and small rice and vegetable roll can't be seen. Jiang Chuyang's stir-frying technique is quite professional. A mixture of yellow mud, dried mugwort leaves, and rice bran. No, in Jiang Chuyang's eyes, this should be a fishing bait. Because it has been stir-frying for some time, it gradually gives off a fragrance. And the more the flavor is fried, the stronger it is, so that the little sweet potato and the little rice and vegetable roll can't help sniffing their noses. The little rice and vegetable roll bit its forefinger and drooled. How fragrant! Jiang Dongju was also somewhat surprised. After all, she never expected that mixing mugwort with rice bran would have such a charming aroma when stir-fried before. But Jiang Chuyang was not satisfied with this, but continued to accelerate the intensity of flipping the bait in his hand. He didn't let out a long sigh of relief until he was sweating profusely and the speed of frying in his hands slowed down. Then he took out all the unfinished firewood from the stove. And the bait in the big pot, now golden in color, stirred with a spatula, will bring a rich and unique aroma to the nose. Fourth brother, can this be just right? Little sweet potato couldn't help but ask at this moment. Of course not, this is for fishing, it's mixed with yellow mud. Jiang Chuyang said, rolled up his sleeves, and used a spatula to scoop all the bait into the basin. However, while it was hot, he rubbed it into a thumb-sized ball with his hand and smelled it before placing it on the nearby stove. Little rice and vegetable roll and little sweet potato swallowed a mouthful of saliva, but finally they didn't steal. After all, they all witnessed the production process, it was really made from yellow mud and rice bran. However, I admire Jiang Chuyang's method of turning decay into magic in my heart. Jiang Dongju also greatly praised, Chuyang, where did you learn the method of making bait? What I saw in the book, fishing is very effective, Jiang Chuyang said with a perfunctory smile. Really? Jiang Dongju was a bit skeptical. After all, going fishing by the river in the winter. In terms of environment, there will be significant limitations. If we could catch a fish, it would be like seeing a ghost. But thinking so, Jiang Dongju didn't say much. Because to some extent, we still need to give some face. And in this chat, Jiang Chuyang suddenly realized something was wrong. After pausing for a moment to rub the bait, Lien looked at the stove. 1, 2, 3. That's not right. Why are 2 missing? I remember rubbing 9 baits. Uncle, Nest. Nest can risk stealing. The little rice and vegetable roll hesitated when hearing the words. But the 2 pieces of rice bran next to her mouth betrayed her. If nothing unexpected happens, I must have stolen one. Fourth brother, I don't know why it's missing, said little sweet potato. But the evasive gaze immediately made Jiang Chuyang and Jiang Dongju understand. After Jiang Dongju regained her senses, she picked up a broom and pulled it over. You damn girl, you ate so much wild rabbit meat this morning, and even stole fishing bait. I can't kill you. Wah. Mao is just right, it's a bait that it's too fragrant to seduce. Xiafanchuan explained while running, and quickly ran out of the kitchen. Yes, it's all my fault, fourth brother. The fried bait is so delicious, it seduces us. Little Sweet Potato also panicked and followed behind. Jiang Dongju was afraid that they would fall, so she didn't chase them out. Instead, she asked Jiang Chuyang with concern, "They won't cause anything if they take the bait, will they?" "No, eating a little bit can still effectively help with digestion, but you absolutely can't eat too much. If you eat too much, you won't be able to pull it out, it will be fatal," Jiang Chuyang replied truthfully. That's good, that's good." Jiang Dongju breathed a sigh of relief. "Second sister, please keep an eye on two mischievous ghosts at home. I went fishing by the river. If nothing unexpected happens, I'll have boiled fish at noon," Jiang Chuyang said, accelerating the speed of rubbing the bait in his hand. After finishing, he packed it in a wooden box, picked up the fishing gear in the corner, and walked towards the river. Jiangjia village is crossed by a large river. Basically, every household will prepare fishing gear. A simple fishing rod is not a problem. However, the river is turbulent, and it's not easy to eat big fish. Some villagers even sacrificed their lives for fishing. The eighth uncle of Jiang Chuyang's family fell into the river just because of fishing. In the end, not even the body was found. And even so, relying on mountains to eat mountains and relying on water to eat water. In the absence of food, many villagers will still come to fish for their stomachs. But today's situation is different because it snowed heavily and there was no one by the riverbank. After finding a flat spot, Jiang Chuyang began to put on the bait. To his surprise, he only stayed outside for 1 or 2 minutes. "I can't bear the cold all over me. My whole body trembled and my nose flowed out." Fortunately, he was prepared before that. Seeing no one else around, he took out the grain wine hidden on his body and took a big sip. "With this one bite, my whole body feels like it's on fire." Jiang Chuyang's hands and feet quickly warmed up. There are many agile ways to wear bait. There's nothing wrong with it. Lifting the stone shattered the thin ice by the river. Then he threw the fishing hook over. End of this chapter.